Jen and Laura. Thank you so much. I remember I started at Google 14 years ago, and so, of course, I was only 18 years old when that was, but I was such a younger woman, and I thought, wow, how cool, there's this group of women who meet and get together and talk about all the things that are so unique to us, and we're just so fortunate to have this group, and so thank you, Jen and Laura, for helping lead the way. Next up is our spokesperson, our keynote, Suzanne Cover. I mentioned earlier, she's a model, she's an entrepreneur, she's a motivational speaker. I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about her before we welcome her up. She's a passionate advocate for helping others find empowerment through adversity and wellness. She's a firm believer that normal people with the right attitude, persistence, and determination can overcome seemingly insurmountable circumstances. After 5 years as a risk arbitrage sales trader, sounds terrible, Suzanne left her Wall Street career in pursuit of her passions and desire to live a more fulfilling life. She reemerged as a wine expert, certified sommelier, entrepreneur, spokesperson, and model represented by Wilhelmina. Please join me in welcoming Suzanne Cover to the stage.
Thank you so much. Sure. Hello. Oh, I just need to figure out. Thank you. And this is just green. Okay, good. Hello. Thank you for having me. My name is Suzanne Cover. I'm an entrepreneur, wellness spokesperson, avid runner, and as you can see, I also do a little modeling. I wasn't always this confident woman. I'm here today to share with you a story of empowerment. It is the story of a little girl who is different. Brown-skinned and curly-haired, growing up in a small, predominantly white Connecticut town. I was often the only person of color in my class, if not entire grade. For the duration of my school days, I endured racial bias, slurs, bullying, and discrimination from students and teachers alike. I learned a lot about adversity during those years. I also learned how to find empowerment and strength in the face of adversity. Later in my life, I would learn how to use life's hardships, setbacks, and disappointments to consciously achieve personal growth. I'll eventually tell you how I'm applying those principles today, but for now, my story can wait. We all have stories, collections of diverse experiences that have broadened our perspectives and contributed to our understanding of each other and self. As women, many of us share stories of similar threads under dissimilar circumstances. Negative or positive, these vignettes serve as the genesis of self-empowerment. Today, together, I will share with you the power of perspective and how collectively we can utilize the diversity of our experiences to empower women not only at Google, but everywhere in both our digital and physical lives. In order to achieve our collective goal of creating an inclusive, diverse community that empowers women, we must first look inward. Through confidence and self-empowerment, we find the strength to grow and achieve. By sharing these stories of growth, the feelings, thoughts, perceptions, we form intangible bonds with one another that ultimately facilitate our collective empowerment. But all too often, this self-empowerment seems fleeting. The stresses of life, influenced by the unshared biases and values of others, leads to conflict. Inevitably, these conflicts promote situations that leave us feeling helpless, ashamed, depressed. But what if we could harness this pain, alter our perceptions, and use it to strengthen not only ourselves, but each other? This is where women's empowerment begins. Let me start with an excerpt of a speech about my childhood that I wrote for the ADL last year. For those who aren't familiar, the Anti-Defamation League is a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to fighting all forms of bigotry and protecting civil rights for all. I asked my mother for stories or pictures to help jog my memory about my school days. Instead, she pulled clippings from 4 different newspapers that had written about my various appearances on ADL diversity education panels nearly 20 years ago. Let me read you a few excerpts. Decades after Rosa Parks refused to sit in the back of a bus because she was Black, first grader Suzanne Cover had to sit in the back of her classroom in Deep River because her teacher told her, "The other students can relate to you better that way." Can you imagine how that felt? I don't think I fully recognized the impact that these and other comments would have on me until I grew up. I told this story to teachers and students at Wesleyan University as part of one of my panelist appearances. Nearly 20 years later, I still remember the gasps from the audience. Here's another one. Imagine yourself 7 years old in the 2nd grade and listening to show and tell with your fellow classmates. One student stands up to explain a picture he's drawn of everyone in the class. "Everyone except Suzanne," he explains, "because I don't count since I'm Black." Wow. So guess what the teacher did? Absolutely nothing. She collected the drawing along with the others and hung it in the hallway for the entire school to see. After many years of countless torts of increasing severity, I was ultimately homeschooled. Could you imagine if there had been no intervention? If I'd not only continued to believe, but accepted that my place was at the back of the classroom, silent because my raised hand was called on only when no other hand was raised? Bullied and told that I wasn't equal to other students because my textured hair was nappy and my brown skin dirty? What teacher turns a blind eye to this? Teachers who lack understanding and acceptance of diversity. Teachers who are unaware that their response or lack thereof to discrimination and bullying sets the standard for other children to follow. Rather than chance a scarring childhood experience, my mother, a teacher and diversity trainer herself, decided to connect me with the ADL. At just 11 years old, I was invited to speak to teachers and students throughout the state of Connecticut about my experiences to spread the message of tolerance. For the very first time, I was given the opportunity to speak out and share my story. I was empowered to take a stand for myself and others in similar circumstance. This helped me realize that not only were the naysayers wrong, but I was a courageous, powerful person capable of rising above and making a difference. I did not forget these lessons. Fast forward 20 years. An ADL coordinator who worked with me as a child recognizes me on a 7-story high billboard in a global campaign for Apple. She asked if I'd be willing to share my story. That excerpt I just read for you was from a speech I wrote for her. Today, I know that I matter. I've gone on to accomplish quite a bit. I'm a college graduate, valedictorian, derivative sales trader turned Court of Masters certified sommelier, wife, and at nearly 30, that frizzy hair and brown skin got me signed to the most prominent sports and fitness modeling division in the world. My appearance, and now story, is amplified by companies that recognize and promote diversity. Certainly never saw that one coming. I typically speak to young adults, and at this point, I would try to deliver a message designed to inspire courage or resilience for anyone dealing with bullying or discrimination. Given that I assume, I hope, you guys aren't out there bullying each other these days, I thought it might be interesting to discuss how my childhood experiences empowered me to become the adult woman I am today. For better or worse, I learned at a very young age that you cannot control what life brings you. The hands we are each dealt are random, and the only guarantee is that there will be ups and there will be downs, time and time again. You can despair and lose sight of your end goal when you hit the trough of a cycle, or you can recognize the cycle for what it is and control your perspective. We've all heard the quote, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." In times of despair, this is a phrase that admittedly brings little comfort. Let's do better. Let's control and improve our perspective. What doesn't kill you makes us stronger. Through the understanding that we will ultimately lever our pain and suffering to benefit the greater good, we find purpose. This sense of purpose fuels the internal desire for personal growth. Once we have made the decision for personal growth over despair, we find ourselves self-empowered. As a child, when the bullying began, I was too young to understand the power of perspective and the confidence that comes through self-empowerment. A victim of the biases and perceptions of others, I was fortunate to have a mother who would take action. When she connected me with the ADL support network, the education I received afforded me the confidence necessary to spread the message of acceptance and diversity. Through my suffering, I had earned the ability to retell my story and offer confidence and empowerment to those who were suffering silently. While I may not have realized it at the time, I was using what hadn't killed me to make us stronger. There's also a saying that everything you ever wanted is just outside your comfort zone. I grew up outside of my comfort zone. None of that was comfortable. By the time I was 11 years old, I'd been called almost every name in the book. I was continuously underestimated by teachers, bullied without repercussion, and certainly not popular. In these circumstances, it is easy to lose hope. Expectations for me had been decided by others, so why bother trying? This perception is toxic and requires alteration. As I saw it, my only option was to simply do my personal best in any given moment or situation for myself. As long as I knew I did my best, I was content. It didn't matter what anyone else said or thought. Bonus points for outperformance. You can't argue with an A or fastest. And often I outperformed. Sometimes I didn't. In hindsight, this perception of self was akin to adding lighter fluid to a raging fire. Despite my teacher's expectations that I wasn't supposed to outperform, my alternative perception resulted in an eager-to-learn, ambitious child. Without realizing it, I had dug deep within myself and found courage, determination, and persistence that even my mother couldn't have expected. I set out to prove these people wrong, for me. As terrible as it is, amongst the cruel words and unchecked bias, not receiving acknowledgement for my successes taught me how to stand on my own, without needing the reassurance from others. I think this experience made it easier for me to forge ahead in out-of-comfort zone situations. Reflecting on my childhood as an adult opened my eyes to the transformative powers of adversity. My tumultuous elementary school years may quite possibly have been one of the most empowering experiences of my life. By the time I applied to college, I developed into a determined young adult, imbued with a confident can-do attitude. I attended Babson College, graduating with a concentration in statistics and French. When it came time to enter the workforce, my competitive grades saw me straight to Wall Street, an environment eerily reminiscent of my 1990s Deep River, Connecticut elementary school days. Predominantly white male, I was not the only person of color in my analyst class, but one of alarmingly few African Americans in front office jobs, let alone the barely handful of female sales traders on the floor. I felt my old self stir. Shields up, just do your best, work hard, and be prepared for anything. I managed to rise to vice president in just 5 years, and for the most part excelled. As long as I ignored ignorant comments or advances made by our commission-paying clients, or forced myself to smile at well-meaning senior colleagues delivering comments such as, "You're not like the rest of them," or "You've really changed my mind about affirmative action." No, bro, not affirmative action. I'm here because I had the mental fortitude to work hard and apply myself. I'm here because I empowered myself to be. My Wall Street experience opened up my eyes to unconscious bias, judgments and assessments that even good, well-meaning people make without realizing they're doing so. Just as a teacher who doesn't address discrimination sets the standard for children to follow, a manager who chortles along with inappropriate comments sets the standard for appropriate behavior. As the years passed, I became increasingly curious about what I did want to do with my time. In a case of disconnected perspectives, I was excited to choose a better outcome for myself. When faced with the dilemma of leaving my Wall Street salary and fancy title to chase my passions, I wish I could say I was fearless. It would be more accurate to say I gave no credence to what anybody thought about my decision. But I was scared. But if nothing else, I knew I could make it work because I believed in my ability to keep going. And I've kept going, all the way to this moment right here at Google with you. The first time I was asked to share my story, I was hesitant to do so. Yes, I overcame something horrific as a child and then again after college, but now I'm 31. How long can you take accolades for that? Perhaps my story is just one of right place, right time, right people, but there's more to it than that. Opportunities to empower each other are afforded to us regularly. Through community and the sharing of personal experiences, we have the ability to provide support, guidance, and empowerment to each other. At times, this may create vulnerabilities. Embrace these fears and harness that energy to deliver a message that will provide strength to your peers. Allow me to go first. Five months ago, I walked into a rheumatologist's office, armed with a stack of test results and blood work from an incredibly trying year of health concerns. Most notably, I suffered from alopecia areata, a surprisingly common yet seldom discussed autoimmune condition that causes the immune system to mistakenly attack hair follicles. This results in random patches of baldness, sometimes large, sometimes small, yet all equally devastating. I tried every ointment, injection, treatment, meditation, and prayer available to me. By the time I married in May of 2015, nearly every hair from the middle of my head to the nape of my neck was gone. There is no known cure. A mere 7 months later, in January 2016, I received an unexpected contract from the fitness division of a major modeling agency. Now this is a perception I could get behind. Despite being nearly 30 years old with no experience and unbeknownst to them missing half of my hair, I signed the contract. Not only was I choosing a different outcome, but I was choosing a potentially embarrassing situation given my health concerns. I put myself through more rounds of unsuccessful treatments, and after months of no progress, more hair loss, and increasing desperation, I decided to change my diet. My hair started growing back almost immediately. I believe diet's effect on health is a topic warranting further discussion, but for now all I can say is, isn't it amazing what a woman can accomplish when properly motivated? But then my hair loss started again, aggressively, near my hairline. I had crossed my T's, dotted my I's, ate like a saint. This was my time to shine. I had decided, but still day after day, more hair in the shower. I tried to lean on my trusty choose a different outcome method, but staring at myself in the mirror, all I saw was bald spots and hopelessness. I can't control this. My method is broken. I'm broken. The pity party lasted for a while. It was a rough summer. It really was time to control my perspective. Eventually, I decided that this wasn't going to be a chapter in my life about a horrible thing that had happened, but rather a chapter about something that inspired me. I had no idea how it would happen, but I was determined to let this miserable experience empower me. So, when my agent emailed asking if there were any volunteers to run the New York Marathon on behalf of the Children's Cancer and Blood Foundation, I raised my hand. Not only did I step up, but I decided that this was going to be my turning point, my catalyst. I emailed my friends and family, from who I had hid my alopecia areata from for years, and told them all exactly why I was running this race. I just explored yet another source of self-empowerment. fitness, and giving back. I poured myself into training for that race and dedicated my time to the Children's Cancer and Blood Foundation. So when I walked into that rheumatologist's office 3 weeks before my first marathon and was told that I had an incurable form of lupus that would likely worsen and need to be managed for the rest of my life, I made another decision. I decided that I am in control. I am empowered, and this is not going to shake me. I've already made it this far. I went on to run the 2017 New York City Marathon, finishing in 3 hours and 49 minutes, and helped to raise over $23,000 for the treatment of children with cancer. You can't control what life throws your way, but you can decide how you respond. I had already seen great improvement from my dietary changes in the year prior. I was now more encouraged than ever to stick with it. When I went in for my follow-up appointment a month later to review the results of my new blood work, a year's worth of increasingly alarming test results had suddenly reversed itself. Not even a month after my diagnosis, I was already in remission. My rheumatologist joked that maybe it was the marathon. I can't say for sure if it was the physical act of running a marathon, but I will say that experience changed me. 5 months later, I am still in remission. And if it comes back, well, I know I can't control what my body does, but I'm sticking on this path of empowerment. And Oprah, here I come. Life will continue to throw curveballs, and at times the odds may be stacked against you. Regardless of the circumstance, you always have a choice in how you respond. Embrace the pain. Control your perception. Allow it to empower you. Share your stories and enjoy this virtuous cycle that is the soul of women's empowerment. My hopes in sharing this story are twofold. 1, if you are dealing with personal difficulties, whether they be of the mind, body, or spirit, you are not alone. Embrace the pain. Use it to your advantage. Use it to empower yourself and others. 2, be brave and forthright in your support for each other. In times of stress, the support of the community can be invaluable, and it is all of our shared responsibility to provide that sense of community to one another. You are fortunate to have the support of an internal organization like Women at Google. Few women in the professional workforce have access to such a well-organized, diverse network. Continue to learn from and strengthen one another and reflect these values in your personal lives. Empowerment through adversity begins with each of us, and collectively, we have the ability to overcome any obstacle. I'm here today because I've been incredibly fortunate, blessed really, to have had the right people nearby and willing to help during my most trying times. That marathon, the kids, my husband, a friend, a colleague, the ADL, my mom, collectively, they saved me. It is impossible to recognize and benefit from such support without feeling the overwhelming urge to pay it forward. People who prevail and make it through hard times often do so because they unearth a part of themselves that they didn't know was there. When exposed to a situation where the pressure is overwhelming, control your perspective, and you will use that losing hand you were dealt to grow beyond what you imagined possible. This is the definition of strength in the face of adversity. So what prompts this? Commitment to your future, the legacy you leave behind for those who follow, or maybe it is your commitment to stand with each other to realize our greatest collective potential. Once you have dug deep and tapped into that well of strength, you know it's there. It'll be there again next time you need it. You've done this before. Or, if you're lucky in life like me, you could possibly become so skilled at dealing with discomfort that you learn to welcome the challenge because the challenge unearths great power within you. Cumulatively, my experiences toughened my skin, built my character, and underscored the importance of community. There is incredible strength and personal growth to be found through adversity. Also important in empowering women is promoting and increasing the visibility of female role models who are leading, making bold moves, and changing our world for the better. But just as relevant is sponsorship of others by women who have achieved personal empowerment themselves. I commend and extend my deep gratitude to Google for doing exactly that by having me here today on International Women's Day. Thank you for empowering me by giving me a chance to share my story. My ask to you today is that we leave this room and take a step towards empowering a young woman. We all have time to do this. It doesn't have to be something big. Sit next to her in the cafeteria today and strike up a conversation. Ask if she'd like to take a walk for coffee. Tell her about your job, what it's like to be in a leadership role. Or tell her about the time you were overlooked for a promotion or how you learned to deal with a difficult client. Notice and compliment her on her achievements. Encourage her ambition. Tell her about your alopecia areata or the struggles of balancing family and office. Or tell her how much you love leadership and giving back to the community. Be real. Sharing stories prepares our future leaders and helps create confident, strong, capable women. While we still need the world to do a lot for women to become equally empowered, so much of that begins with us. It starts with the belief that you have the power to ignite change. You write your own story. You have a choice. You will decide. Together, we will lever the diversity of our stories and experiences to create an inclusive community of empowered women, both at Google and abroad. Just remember, what doesn't kill you makes us stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. So we have a couple mics out. If you don't mind sticking around for a few minutes, we'd like to invite all of you up to ask Suzanne any questions you might have, anything top of mind. Please feel free to come on right up to the microphones. Anyone?
I have like 85 questions.
Okay, cool.
I guess top of mind, I am curious how you now relate to your hometown and if your mother still lives there, and like how do you think about those kids you went to school with?
It's interesting because I truly believe that experience growing up in Deep River under those circumstances was probably the greatest gift I've been given in a sense, because it really taught me a lot, like I said, about adversity. It made me a more sensitive person. It made me a stronger person. If I hadn't been through those experiences, I'm not necessarily sure I would have had the confidence to be the woman I am today. But she is still there. I love going home. I sometimes see former classmates from those days, and it's very interesting to see how much things have changed, It really has. And going back, and talking to some people or seeing teachers, like I've had teachers apologize for just a lack of awareness. And like I look back on it as there is no resentment, there is no anger. I think a lot of it comes from just a lack of awareness, which is why it's so important for us to share stories, because how could you know that this is potentially a sensitive issue or a difficult pill for someone to swallow if you don't understand what it's like from someone else's perspective?
Thank you.
Of course.
Well, this isn't the White House, so can I have a follow-up question?
Of course.
And this is a really practical one, but you just appear to be so vibrant and healthy, and I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing like the diet changes you made. And
Absolutely. I'm not going to lie, it was an ordeal, but probably also one of the most educational experiences of my life. I ended up doing what's called an elimination diet, where they have you remove all of them, common or not so common, potentially allergenic food groups. And immediately found that I was reactive to, I found it at 29 that apparently I'm allergic to peanuts. Eat enough peanuts, maybe your hair will start falling out. But for me, it was a combination of many different things. it was very difficult if the stakes weren't so high and I wasn't highly motivated to keep my hair on my head. I'm not sure I would have been able to do it, but in the process, I learned so much about how food impacts our body and inflammation and things along those lines, and I turned a blind eye to it forever because I'm a runner. Like, I love running. Like, eat your food, go to the gym. It's about balance. It'll be fine. But each of us, I think every individual probably has a couple of items that they're sensitive to, and unfortunately, you're not able to figure out what that is unless you do a full elimination diet. So, of course.
Hi. The first time I was asked by a younger woman to have a phone call with her to discuss career issues, I remember thinking, I have no idea what I can possibly teach her, because I still felt like I had so many of those questions myself. So I'm wondering at what point you realized that you had something to give to younger people, just because you were talking about the importance of mentorship and
Yep.
helping sponsoring other women.
You know, it's so funny. I really shied away when people would ask me to speak. I shied away for the longest time because I'm like, I'm a normal person. Like, what have I done? Like, why are they interested in my story? But I think, and it was really at that, I spoke at an ADL concert over the summer where there were a lot of children present. And it was specifically about my childhood experiences and how I overcame them, but just the hordes of small children that approached me afterwards. I don't even think it's necessarily that you need to have, that it's a specific thing that you need to say to them or a specific thing you need to do. I think it's just important for kids or women, adults, to see people in roles doing things that they might aspire to do. And even though you might think it's boring that, you know, oh, I went to school here, I did this, or I'm interested in reading about this, or this area of, you know, just share your process. Like, if you made a mistake along the way, share that. Maybe they won't make the same mistake. It's just, I really strongly get behind just sharing your stories. There's nothing, there's no bad that can come of it. Cool.
Any other questions? No one else? Okay, thank you so much, Suzanne.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.